Good day, everyone, and welcome to. Oops, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I'll edit that out. Good day, everyone, and welcome to the News Behind the News with Ralph Kintab. Today, I'm joined with a special guest, the director of the St. Martin Pension Fund (APS), and that is Miss Nadia Cruz Van Putten. Welcome to the program, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Ralph. It's wonderful to be here. Thank
Yes.
you.
So I've spoken to you several times before on different platforms, I would say, but it's your first time here with us. And so, in case we have some new listeners who may not know about you, just give us a brief intro about who Nadia is and what you do.
Yes, I am Nadia Cruz van Putten. I am married, one child, and what I do professionally is run the Algemeen Pensioenfonds St. Martin, the General Pension Fund of St. Martin, which is one of the largest financial institutions on the island. What we do is pay out pensions and invest locally and internationally.
Okay, great. And so, can you share with us a bit about what's the latest that's been happening at APS for the
Well,
past year?
the latest of the latest maybe is the fact that we again once more were able to publish our year report on time, our financial statements 2020.
Mhm.
So that was something that we were very proud of. We want to keep that trend going. And we have been working on several investments behind the scenes. Of course, I can't mention any names right now, but we're working on one for about 7 million
Nice.
and another smaller one for 3 million. And we hope this year to really close off with a big one.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. And so the direction of this interview will kind of be based on the same 2020 annual report that you posted. Because back in July, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to read through it and I found it pretty interesting. So, again, thank you for being here. And to start off, one of the things I saw was that APS still did not have a full board. And what's the status of that?
Yes, indeed. And that is definitely something the General Chamber will be mentioning. The General Chamber, Audit Chamber, is the entity that supervises APS.
Okay.
And I'm sure that will be mentioned in a report that we do have a serious governance issue as we do not have a full board. As you can imagine, for the pension fund to be able to make certain decisions, you need to have a board in place. I, as a director, have a mandate that has been given to me by the board, but that has certain limits. So it's very important to have a full board, and in the long run, if this situation keeps on going, we will not be able to invest anymore, which will mean that we will start losing money.
Okay, we can't have that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we
serious.
can't
It's
have
very
that.
serious
Yeah.
situation. A lot of it's not something that's isolated only to APS. I know that more organizations in St. Martin have
Yeah,
the
they
same
don't have a
problem.
board. Yes.
And there are many reasons maybe why at government level choices are not made or choices are put on hold. However, these have serious repercussions when it comes to a pension fund.
Correct. And the overall checks and balances of the nation itself.
Of course,
Yeah.
because it's basically your pension fund money
Mhm.
that will not be able to be invested. So that means that it's going to sit there at 0%, which drags down the coverage ratio in the end. Because I can, for example, with my team, I can ensure that all the advices and all the due diligence is done to ensure that we know what to invest in. But the decision itself, yes or no, lays with the board. So if you don't have a complete board, you can't do that.
Yeah, at a standstill.
And every day we basically get money in, because premiums are being paid every month. So money will keep accumulating, and it can't come out
Yeah,
to
yeah,
invest.
yeah,
So it's a very serious situation, and we hope that in some way or the other it will be remedied at very short notice.
Yeah. And you also just mentioned the coverage ratio. I also saw one of the things in the report, and that has been consistent with APS, is that you've been able to be above your, I think, is 100%
Yes.
objective.
Well, we
the
have
coverage
we have a couple of objectives.
from
Look,
the little-
and in the pension world, it's very important that you can at least achieve 100%, because
Okay.
that means you are just able to pay all of your debts and also your obligations. That you can do your obligation, which is paying out pensions, and cover everything else. However, However, that is not where you want to be, because with any little shock in the international markets or any little downside, you will definitely dip under the 100%. So we have as internal policy that we want to be at 105. And of course, going forward, you want to be at 110, 115, and higher. So what we are doing is basically looking for good investments to ensure that the money keeps rolling in. And I can say that as of end of July, we are now at 107. So we closed at 102
Wow.
in December,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to make certain decisions, for example, to put new mortality tables and so on, because people are living longer.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed to make that adjustments in our figures, which also took a bit of fat off our coverage ratio, lowering it to 102%.
Mm-hmm.
But by now already, we are back at 107 in July. And in a couple of weeks, I will have the figures of August. And I expect, from what I've seen already, that our numbers will grow again.
Mm-hmm. And so, of course, considering the fact that last year was very much a standstill, but you're still able to pull off, these numbers. And this year we've witnessed, some growth in the island's economy, the global economy. But, now you're still seeing certain shocks and just due to global events and how much does that affect our pension fund?
Well, we can go back a little bit in time to March 2020 when the lockdown occurred. That was the biggest shock for us, and I think worldwide. On international markets, we then had a huge dip, and that had to do with the fact that China was closed. However you look at it, China is a place where a lot of things is made, and things get shipped from China to the US, where things then get manufactured a lot of times. You have that link. So once China was down and the US was down due to the virus, you had a dip that was visible in the months of March, April, that was really, really heavy, but still not super heavy for a financial institution, but it was heavy. We absorbed it. And at a certain point, the markets and the industries began getting used to the whole situation with the virus. Don't forget, you had lockdowns to deal with in the first few months. But once people were able to go back to work, you see the numbers going back up. So around, I think June, July, we were already above the 100%. And that was basically based on our investment policy, because we invest very conservatively. Yeah. So that made us not dip too deep when it was bad. But when things started going back up, we were able to gain conservatively some points. And I think I'm really happy with that, because we were able to gain about I think 7% in 2020, which is above our goal. Actually, quite a few points above
Yeah,
our goal.
yeah.
So yes, the Corona year of 2020 was a terrible year for us personally, as people, but as a pension fund, as a financial institution, we did well. We were
Nice.
able to take the hit of the mortality tables that needed to be put in, let's say a bit more stringent tables. So those take a few percentages off your coverage ratio. If we didn't do that, we would have been much higher at closing 2020, but then it wouldn't really be the truth, because people are living longer.
Correct.
So should I really have this number as my mortality table? So now I think, because of those adjustments that we made, of course, based on the actuaries' advice, we feel that we are much more future ready and robust, as we have made those difficult choices when times were well for us.
Yeah, and I like that you said I made those difficult choices when times were well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's even more difficult to make those tough choices when things are not as rosy.
Yeah.
Indeed. So in addition to that, when we last spoke, at least, you mentioned the housing project and APS headquarters, and so what update is there that you want to share?
Well, the housing project is going really well. I think we only have like 2 apartments left or something. So it's really going really well. When it comes to our new building, that's even better. As I understood that today, the permit is being requested. So they have an appointment today to go put in the papers and so on, and then we have to wait.
Yeah, okay.
Unfortunately, it's a long wait. You don't know how long it's gonna take.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, and in addition to that, speaking of buildings, usually we get these statements made in Parliament where different MPs tend to have their idea of what APS can invest in or should consider building or fixing, whatever. And so, based on that, can you also elaborate on what are the main tasks or goals of the not goals but tasks of the institution, but also how do you go about making a decision when it comes to an investment?
Yes. Yeah, I think you're referring to the latest news in the media of what APS should invest in, which was the Parliament building.
Yes, correct.
You know, as long as I've been in St. Martin, some politician from either party has come up with that idea. So it's not a new idea for me, and it's also not a bad idea because an investment in a building that would save on rent, because I think that was the idea behind MP Marlin's thought, is not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. But just as with any good idea, basically APS needs to get a plan. Somebody needs to come to us and say, hey, this is what we would like to do. This is our plan. Look at it here on paper. And when that happens, then a process of due diligence occurs. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to put our financial and legal minds to the test, and they will take that business case and they will take it apart, basically. They will look at if it's a sound investment. They will look at if government, in this case, will be able to finance it, or if there will be a different type of setup, for example, in them selling the land to APS and we then building it ourselves or giving it to someone else to do, because you have to also look at the legal ramifications. Because as far as I know right now, government of St. Martin is not able to take on a loan.
Correct.
Due to CFT and restrictions that they have. So their best bet would be in such a case to say, okay, APS, here's the land of the Parliament building. Here you can go, buy it, and please make sure that this is for the Parliament building and not, I don't know, a hotel or something. As government, you could say, that this is something that we feel is important, and we would lock them in, of course, and say, okay, we will build this building, but you are required then for the next 20 years to pay us rent.
Correct.
So there's a lot of options. But again, all of this can only occur as long as a financial and legal due diligence says that this is viable for APS. And that is not because it's an idea that comes from a certain political party or an MP or not. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that our core task is ensuring the financial stability of the fund. So we need to ensure that we can make enough money to keep the fund going and growing. So that is basically what it is. And once we have the financial part down and the legal side down, we can then move on to our investment committee. They will take a second opinion, and they will then be able to say that it's a sound investment or not, or give some thoughts on what can be done better. And after that, then the board will decide.
Okay. So another thing that I read was in relation to your local investments, and that last year your net return was 4.46. And then so can you share which of your investments locally have been most profitable?
I think the coolest investment we had last year was the one in the yachting industry. That's Ile de Sol. A lot of people don't understand that industry, so they have an opinion, but the figures don't lie. This was a really, really good investment for us. It's a industry that basically doesn't really feel the hit, that most of us feel personally when there is a crisis. Because when it comes to this industry, we're talking about people of a certain wealth who make use of it. So and at some point in time, the yachts need to go somewhere. And that somewhere is usually the Caribbean. And St. Martin simply is one of the preferred hubs. So that was really good. We were able to definitely offload a lot of money into that investment, and they have been paying back diligently. And we can definitely see that back in our return. That is definitely one of the things that put us over the edge. And also, what is also nice is the ability that we had to be able to get some good time deposits, because we try to keep as little money as possible, earning 0%. And we really, got serious with those banks and really went and discussed, the best rates. And we were able to get some really good time deposits. So there's very little money that is earning nothing. So so I think that is really, really, the combination of those two.
Okay, that's cool. And so I have a question for you. And this came to mind because I was wondering because I understand the territory of finances where investments are concerned, something you make and lose money. So what happens really when APS loses money on a project? Let's say maybe even the it went through the checks and balances and it
Yes.
was projected to make money, but maybe outside shocks or whatever, money is lost. Is it just
Mm,
lost money? Like, is there what sort of protection I guess is there to recoup funds, or
mm.
yeah, is that just part of the game?
There's two types of losing money. For
Okay.
example, when you build something, let's say you build a development,
Mhm.
um, you cannot make money right away on it because let's say you finish building it in the middle of the year.
Mhm.
You still have to look for a tenant, right?
True.
So the time that it takes to get tenants so that you can get your building tenanted is something that you also need to take into account. So sometimes when people look at the figures within that moment in
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
they will be like, "Oh my God, they're losing money." But that's not. I don't see that as losing money. I
Mhm.
see that as a normal part of what needs to occur before you can start making money.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's basically a phase, in your investment process.
Mhm.
When you do a development, you need to be able to handle that as a fund. You cannot be freaking out at every single little thing that happens. Another thing that can happen when you can lose money is, for example, shocks in the international market.
Mhm.
So we have millions in the international market. And you see, if you have to go and follow it on a daily basis, you'll have a heart attack every day because it's basically up and down
Yeah.
and up and down. But overall, it goes up,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, you need to be able to understand that as a financial institution, you shouldn't be making daily decisions on where to put your monies and freaking out every time you lose a couple here and a couple there,
Mhm.
because you have to also remember that that is the strategy. Because if you lose a couple there, you will be gaining a
Okay.
whole
Yeah.
lot more on the other side,
True. True.
right? Somewhere else. That's why we have different strategies, very conservatively invested, so we don't have to stress like that. When you are an active investor, like a lot of people who are investing, for example, in Bitcoin, they need to be on a computer every day
Yeah.
because any moment something could happen. Somebody in the Bitcoin world can, I don't know, go on vacation and then suddenly the things drop.
Mhm. Mhm.
We don't have that type of issue because we invest in completely different type of stocks. Another thing that could happen is that you have a financial investment and the company goes belly up.
Mhm.
I don't lose sleep over that either because what we do, just like banks, for example, we have collateral.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the idea is that when you do an investment, you do that due diligence to ensure that you have collateral in place, sometimes even personal guarantees. So,
Mhm.
for example, the directors will have their own personal funds invested. You will have, for example, the land that you can, or building
Mhm.
that you can take back.
Mhm.
So you have to have different things in place. Sometimes even the way the money streams go. Who do they pay first? Do they pay APS first, or
Gotcha.
do they pay, I don't know, something else? So
Yeah.
you can do all kinds of things in your facility agreement to ensure that you get your money, and if things go bad, you get your money too.
Mhm.
One of the things, for example, I can say is that when we go through the business case and we take it apart,
Mhm.
we also look at worst case scenarios. So, for example, this is just an example. If you're investing in an airline, right? One of the things that we will do is play with the cost of fuel. So if the fuel goes up by so much percentage, will you still be able to pay back your loan?
Mhm.
Yes or no? Now you will see then, for example, that they will get less cash flow, which means that they will have less ability to pay back a
Right.
loan.
Mhm.
Or, for example, you will say, what happens if the fuels goes up and the passenger loads go down?
Mhm.
Yeah, those type of worst case scenarios
Gotcha.
we will then discuss with the company and say, hey, we think that this loan might not be the best thing for you because you will not be able to pay it back.
Mhm.
Or what collateral do you have so that we can be sure that in case you don't pay back, we have something, that we can regain our funds from. So that's why, it's a different type of yes issue
Mhm.
for us as a financial institution. You see people out there freaking out every time we do an investment, but we know that we did the homework,
Yeah, you did
so
that
we
one.
can sit back and relax and calmly see what's going to happen in the coming years, because our investments are not for 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The time it takes
Short
people to
term
get
gain.
over it.
Yeah.
It takes 10 years, 7 years, sometimes even longer.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Okay, great. And one of the things that where that at least you individually do is take part in trainings, and I think you did one recently in the Netherlands, was it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
How was
did a
that?
training on leadership. but very much in how I think. So basically, I worked on myself for a change. Because technically at APS we do a lot of training in let's say pension regulations, and even I have to keep up with how to do the calculations, even though I don't do it. I don't do them on a daily basis at all. But we have those trainings every 2 years to keep ourselves, in the know. So we do a lot of, I will always say content driven education. And this year I chose to do something that is basically going to help me in to become a better leader, to manage my teams better, and to be more aware of how my decisions impact others.
Okay. Okay, great. And so, in addition to that, going back to the report and like local investments, I saw that one of those that APS made an investment in was a rainforest.
Mhm.
And well, due to their difficulties dealing with Irma and COVID, the returns wasn't what it was expected. So, in cases like that, how does APS? Because I saw you mention that APS will be increasing its monitoring and getting the reports from the organization. So, what is that process like?
Yes, so they were really hit hard because as all other industries who are in the tourism sector, they were hit really, really hard because at a certain point we had zero tourists coming in via cruise and airlines. So that was really devastating because just as they were getting back up on their feet after Irma hit them, because they even had damage after Irma, just as they were getting back on their feet after a couple of good months, Corona happened, shutting them down basically completely. They couldn't even get locals because it was completely closed. You had a lockdown, right? So they really have been going through a lot of financial hardship. And one of the things that we do in such a case is we put a waiver. We give them a waiver. We're not only the only lenders, by the way. There are more lenders than us. So the lenders in this case will say, okay, here's a waiver. Things are bad. We trust in you. We know things are gonna get better at some point, so we hold off on the loan, and then we wait. When things started opening up back, exactly that is what we did. We increased monitoring to ensure that the right decisions are made at the right time,
Gotcha.
so that the money can be recuperated. Don't forget, we are very experienced when it comes to these situations, and our expertise and guidance during bad times and good times, by the way, can really help a company recuperate in a faster time. From what I have seen up to now in the reports, things are getting better and better. But that is basically something that is island wide, that we see slowly everything going better in the tourism industries. We see, because we also have investments in the hotel sector, we see that amounts of tourists who are staying over are getting more and more and more, and this all points in the right direction. So yeah, I'm hoping for a really good high season.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll take a quick break and be right back based on the last event. Okay. Welcome back. We are joined here with Nadia Cruz Van Putten, the director of APS, here on the News Behind the News with Ralph Kentab. And so, based off of the last question that you answered, you mentioned that APS does have some local investments in the hotel industry, which is one of the questions I had lined up for you, because I saw that you have made investments in the Maho with operations loan and Paradise Bay Resort as well. And so my question is, what can you say about the island's tourism industry and ways in which it can help revive our economy, not just with tourism but other viable options as well?
I think the tourism industry in St. Martin is definitely getting better and better. We're getting used to the new times we're living in. We can see passenger loads going up. We can see tourism stays going up. We could see the resilience of different companies, but also of the people who are able to push through and get that income, flowing in those industries. But on the other side, it's also important to realize that we okay, we're living on an island, but we're not living on an island. This is a
Mhm.
global world, and if you really want to ensure that investors can um, feel welcome here in St. Martin when investing, either they be local or international investors, we really need to look at our government procedures, the red tape that we face, when we need to request permits or we need certain services from government.
Mhm.
We really need to get that up to date. The wait is very long,
Too long, yeah.
and with every week that you wait beyond what you're supposed to wait, you're losing money.
Mhm.
That is a way to say that APS loses money. Every day that we don't have a permit in place to be able to, for example, start building and renovating at Mary's Fancy
Mhm.
is a week too long.
Mhm.
You might remember that we spoke about it.
Yes.
How in January I put in for the permit at Mary's Fancy, and every day I hear, oh, you didn't build nothing yet at every Fancy. Well, I would like to, but
Yeah,
I need to stick to.
break the law.
I'm not gonna break the law. Not as
Yes,
APS. I mean, there are a lot of individuals, who do that, but I'm a
Yeah.
financial institution
Yeah.
supervised by the central bank and
Yeah.
the general audit chamber. I can't just go and start building just like that without
Right.
a permit. So people need to realize that everything happens, for a reason, and there's a purpose behind why certain things can't happen.
Mhm.
And if I have that problem, imagine other investors, imagine international investors who might feel at a certain point like, you know what, let me go to another
Yeah,
island. This is
yeah.
just getting too much.
Yeah, correct.
I'm not gonna go anywhere, basically. APS is not going to
Yeah,
go anywhere. So
yeah.
we'll just keep waiting. If
Correct.
it takes 23 months, like another project we had took that long,
Wow.
or 11 months,
Mhm.
that's another project we had that took that long, we will still wait those 11 or
But there will
23
be an
months.
impact, though.
Yeah, but it impacts your fund, and it impacts our ability to get that money out there, pumping in the economy, getting people those jobs. And
Mhm.
don't forget, because when you have the constructions going on, you have a lot of local construction people
Correct.
working there and getting their salaries. So, and that money gets then paid back into TOT because people are paying taxes and government coffers get filled again. So yeah,
The
it's
money circulates.
money circulates whenever
Yeah.
you have such a big project. So it's very unfortunate that you have to wait so long every
Mhm.
time. But I think that's very important that we look at ways of cutting down the red tape, and getting things flowing faster for investors.
And even regarding the Mary Fancy project, were you able to get an operator for it?
We're still looking for an operator. We have one that we're speaking to right now. I would say very serious talks.
Mhm.
But as we are in a corona time, we're not putting any extra stress on ourselves
Correct.
or operators because everybody is basically waiting to see how things are going to go.
The rollout.
But what I would like to do is just get the renovation of the monuments
Mhm.
going, because that is irrespective if you have an operator or not.
Correct.
You can get those things going, get them back into their state that they need to be in.
Mhm.
And then in the meantime, you can keep looking for operator or have your discussions. But then you have some liveliness at the Mary's Fancy.
Mhm.
But okay, that's so.
Yeah,
You
it
never
is.
know. But I'm really hoping that we can get that permit soon.
Okay. One of the things I saw as well that you guys have in your portfolio is 2 local bonds
Mm-hmm.
with Telem in the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And can you explain the benefit of holding a bond in your portfolio?
Well, bonds are seen as very safe investments,
Okay.
especially when they are from your utility companies. So any financial institution that is local would be crazy not to have a GB bond, a Telem bond, a Harbor bond,
Mhm.
and so on. A PGIAE bond, for
Mhm.
example, airport bond.
Mhm.
Those are the pillars of your nation.
Mhm.
So usually those type of institutions would want to be funded locally because that local money
Mhm.
will be from their own pension fund,
Correct.
for example, or it will be from another local pension fund or a local bank
Thanks. Yeah.
because you want to keep the money rolling locally.
Yeah.
It's very rare for those type of institutions to go internationally. What you see happening when they still make that choice is oftentimes, that they become the number. We've seen it happen with certain institutions here or companies here in St. Martin, where when things got bad, financial institutions drop them because they're
Mhm.
just a number. But
Mhm.
here, if you have the local financial institutions behind you, they understand.
Yeah.
They know what type of hardship is going on. For example, if APS was to invest in the harbor, right?
Mhm.
We do have investment in the harbor, but just as an example,
Mhm.
something they have a bad time there. It's not like I'm gonna go and say, "Hey, let's sell the harbor
Yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah,
to get my
yeah,
money back."
yeah.
No, no,
Correct.
no. We all know we need the harbor. The harbor is of utmost importance for the
Mm-hmm.
island,
Mm-hmm.
so we can sit and wait because at some point it's gonna get better,
Correct.
and we will get our money. Sometimes even twice full,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually not a lie because they are great. The harbor is a great company,
Nice.
but
That's good to know.
but it's really important that local financial institutions get the chance to help local companies, especially utilities. It's
Mm-hmm.
very important. Yeah.
Okay. And so, and even in that, APS has also been a assistance, one of the local lenders for the medical center,
Oh
and the
yes.
pace of that has maybe been slow, but
Not really. I
mhm.
thought it was. Well, one of the things that happened in the beginning was that there was a lot of political drama,
Yes.
and that was basically happening while the actual lenders were talking to the hospital.
Okay.
Those two things never really crossed each other. So yes, in the media you see a lot of drama about the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
but those who really were in charge and in the know were never bothered by that. So we had our own timeline and we handled that timeline. There was a lot of research done, at least on the part of APS, as to how we could really make sure that the hospital would be a sound investment.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at, for example, the hospitals in Aruba and Curacao, there were a lot of mistakes made there in the way the financing was set up, structured, but also items forgotten in the building. Like for example, they forgot surgery in one of those hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how to avoid all those type of mistakes? Now we looked at that. We did extra research on that. We made sure to incorporate different things in the facility agreement together with the other lenders that would ensure that we feel safe, also in the worst case scenario situation. And we were gladly, we feel really good about signing. However, we had been confronted with Irma.
Yeah.
Now, once Irma happened, the old hospital, the one that we still have now, had to be renovated
Correct.
to be able to survive until the new one came. So it's yes, it's later, but this is a necessary, step that you had to take to be able to build a new one. Another thing that happened was at some point when everything was locked and signed, and the people started coming, the Italians from the company that's building. The thing they have like a certain group of specialists who have to come to St. Martin. Half of them came, and then Corona happened, lockdown, shut down. As you know, Italy was a disaster.
Like the prime,
yeah.
For first a major hard hit country.
Yes, very, very. So they were shut down. Italy was shut down, but also St. Martin was shut down. So at some point, basically, there was also no construction going on. That was also shut down for even longer than the lockdown that we had. So nothing could happen for a while. So then, yes, your timeline shifts, but is that really something that you would say we are late? No, we're not late. We are basically shifting with the times and with the requirements that we have and the ability that we have. And what is going on right now that I know, but these things maybe you can ask also Mr. Holiday. He can really go more deeper into this. But as a lender, I can say that they're making us feel really good and very comfortable with the fact that they are trying to pick up the pace so that the time that was lost could be recuperated as much as possible. I am seeing a very diligent and very hands-on project management at the hospital. We visited recently the work area, and it's very professionally managed, and it looks really, really good. I mean, they are constantly getting things in order, no matter what the circumstances. So I'm happy with how things are going, and we are doing our drawdowns together with the other lenders. And as long as we get reports that show progress and that things are going good, I'm happy. I'm happy, and everybody out there who wants to complain and wants to be negative can be so. However, when I look at the numbers, when I look at the reports, I have a positive outlook.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's good to know. So I just have about two more questions for you.
Only two?
One of them being as what I saw that you guys have a SXM investment agency. So is that a sort of venture capital firm or
No, venture capital, a pension fund. No.
And so what are the plans for that, especially since I saw that APS is currently the sole shareholder.
Yes, we are currently the sole shareholder. Hopefully, not for a very very long time.
Okay.
But basically, it's an entity that we created to be able to help structure deals. One of the things that is
Gotcha.
sometimes frustrating in my daily job is that, especially before we had SMIA, that's how we call it, St. Martin Investment
Okay,
Agency
SMIA.
is
Gotcha.
short for SMIA.
Gotcha.
Is that when people come with a really good idea to my office, and I just feel like, wow, this would be amazing if this could just be a great business case. Because sometimes people come in and they don't even have anything on paper, or they don't have the ability to really put that plan on paper in such a way that you would say, this is something I'm going to invest in. And it's not my job at a pension fund to go and write that business case or go and tweak it, I only basically look at items that come ready-made for me to pull apart, basically.
Yeah.
So what do you do with those good ideas? And that was something that was always, in the back of our minds, as a pension fund, always feel like, you could you have done more or not, but you can't. And at some point in time, our board and directorate made a decision to say, let's do something about this, because there's no institution in St. Martin dedicated to structuring deals. There's no institution in St. Martin dedicated to what they call making something bankable. Making something bankable by making that business case together with the entity so that it can be interesting for financial institutions like APS or even local banks. Not everything has to be financed by APS. SMIA is maybe financed by APS right now, but it's not tied to only to APS.
Right.
They could finance things together with Carolinian companies as long as it's something here in St. Martin for the St. Martin local economy, because that is what we want. We want to ensure that the investments are being done, that they're being done sustainably, that great ideas have a chance to become great companies.
That's great. Yeah, that's very great. Because I know you mentioned earlier too that another thing is that given the size of the fund, of course, that you don't just accept any business proposal. Also considering the amount, the request amount, because you prefer, of course, those that are in like the millions of dollars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We have done small ones too in the past, but it's really not sensible if you are if you're a large pension fund to go do a little 10,000 here, 10,000 there.
Yeah.
I actually tell people sometimes, you know what, go look at Q credits, because they actually do smaller amounts. You also have grants that you can get from the World Bank,
Yes,
the trust fund. There are programs that the NRPB are doing that is really suited to small improvements and so on. We are more for the big things, when you want to go and build a big company out. If you have a mid-sized company and you want to start building it out to something larger.
Corporate.
Yeah. Like the renovation of hotels, you're talking millions. Because if we're getting, let's say, every year on average 100 million in, I need to at least invest that 100 million back or more, right?
Yeah.
So because it's
you don't want to stretch this, just stretch out a bunch of little grants. Not grants, but payments. But rather chunks.
You want chunks. But for example, what the SMIA could do, they could have maybe a project in which they have several small chunks, putting it together as one big chunk for APS or for the local banks.
Yeah.
So that is what makes it interesting and makes it make sense for us, because we need big chunks. But I don't need to be making that big chunk myself. I need someone else to do it for me, and that is what SMIA is there for.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And so finally, I also saw that. Right now, the active number of persons you're paying out to, those on pension, is about 1,200 persons. A little over 1,200.
Yeah, a little over, yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we are faced with in some other countries is that we have an aging population. And so can you detail how does that affect funding in the pension world? What are the solutions in dealing with that?
Yes, we definitely have an aging population. Our issue is also that, it's also unfriendly when I say our issue is that people live longer, but that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
These are jokes you can only make with people who work at funeral homes and pension funds, know. But it's basically what I'm trying to say is that it's just a number game. if people live longer, a pension fund needs to keep more money in the bank to be able to pay out now and in the future. So it's just, a simple calculation. So once you realize that people live longer, you need to use, for example, stricter mortality tables, but you also need to make sure indeed that you have enough money by investing right, making at least above average of what you're supposed to make so that you can keep up with the trend of people living longer. So at this moment, no, we don't have any issues. We actually incorporated new mortality tables to be able to make ourselves more robust.
Gotcha.
I think doing that definitely cost us a lot in our coverage ratio. So we could have chosen not to do that and have a higher coverage ratio, but then you wouldn't be fair. You know, understand what I mean? Because you know already that you are going to undercut the fund if you don't do what you need to do. So that's why we took that hit this year. We had that extra fat to do so, and we were still able to keep ourselves over the 100% by ending at 102 and end of the year. And like I said earlier in the call, end of July we were at 107, and I expect August to be also higher than 107. So
Nice.
yeah, we're basically we gain about half a percentage point every month this year. It's going really stable, slowly but stable. So let's all keep our fingers crossed that we can hit that 110 mark at the end of the year.
Okay, and then for clarity's sake, so the SMEA, is it like officially launched, and or was it just in the building
Well,
phase? Like,
Well, we had a soft launch
okay,
a couple of years ago with the financial institutions that we need to work with. So those know that we are there, and I know that SMIA is right now working really hard on getting projects in and getting themselves known out there when it comes to the financial institutions. I am sure that they will be having let's say, a more public launch at some time. But just like APS, they like to do the work.
I got
They
you.
like to do the work. They don't like to be out there. They like to do the work and get some projects in and get some financing done in order for them to start, let's say, getting out there on a more public, in a more public, you
Yeah,
know,
I got
phase
you.
and events and stuff like that.
I got you.
It's all about the work.
Gotcha.
Mm.
Well, thanks for coming on here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. You know,
No
I,
problem.
I always appreciate your questions. You do your homework before you ask anything, and I enjoy being interviewed by you. So thank you very
My
much.
pleasure. All right. And there you go, listeners. That was the director of APS, Miss Nadia Cruz Van Putten. You were listening to the news behind the news with Ralph and Tao on 94.7 Mix FM. Take care and see you again next time. Perfecto.
Okay.
Yay, good job.